back to the Inspire Health podcast, and we continue on with our series on living freely. And if you guys have been following along with this series, make sure to go back and check the past few episodes in this one. This is a phenomenal series. I feel like incredibly timely for right at this time in our history. We've had some amazing guests sharing very different perspectives on what it means to live freely, where maybe we haven't been living so freely, and what we can do to actually start to move more in that direction. And today we are really happy to have come across the work of Jesse and Johanna Boudreau. And they run Zia Energetics Permaculture out in New Mexico. And that's a family-based business there where they share the sovereignty, health, and collective resilience available to all people through reconnecting to a nature-based lifestyle. And I tell you, when I read that, it really moved my heart because I feel like so many of the messages coming out from many different people is the not only the importance, but I would say even right now, almost a necessity to get back into being in alignment with nature's principles. I feel like we've gotten so far off that now we are on that slingshot of having to come back and reconnect back to it. And Jesse and Johanna have really dedicated their life to being very intimately connected to nature. And over the past 23 years, they've been creating right livelihood for themselves as homesteaders, foragers, market growers, mushroom cultivators, beekeepers, which we have actually just started to incorporate. We
Our
can
bee
talk about
babies
that
are
too.
coming
Yeah.
next month.
Cob builders and herbalists. And I mean, Jesse has resolutely been practicing raw food nutrition, fasting, meditation, sun gazing, qigong, and the breatharian arts for the past 14 years. So we want to dive into all of this stuff and some really powerful practices, all back in alignment with nature. So,
And he reversed his physical and mental health issues and has been living on liquids for more than 6 years now. So this is another conversation that we're excited to get into with regards to even what is possible, because a lot of the things that we have been taught in the conventional school system that is not possible, you can only go without food for only a few weeks. Well, there are people that have been laying that to rest and living well beyond the few week period without food. So yeah, let's dive in to all of that.
guys, welcome to the
Thank
show.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure to be here. You guys are lovely. I enjoyed meeting you and appreciate the work you're doing.
Well, I think this will be really fun because as we were just chatting and Teo was saying, we didn't realize that you guys had kids, and it's always fun to have conversations with people that have done lots of different things that are outside of the box and then also done that with children, because it's one thing to not have kids and be sort of
Single.
grounded in all of the, I'd say responsibilities that are entailed with having children and oh, gosh, like all of the stuff that comes up with just for parents, and any parents out there know what I'm talking about. It's like you go through a portal when you have kids. It's all of a sudden everything you've heard about actually lands as being embodied in yourself. And then you're sort of in these storms of trying to figure out exactly all the things to do and navigate your life.
Holy shit moments.
A lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a new chapter in life where you're just really not prepared for it.
Yeah.
It's all a big, I guess, experiment.
If you embrace it, it's a wonderful spiritual path, because you learn to direct your energy. We're usually so concentrated on myself and my project and to then direct most of your energy to the well-being of someone else is, amazing. Just practice.
And fathers and mothers have such different ways of doing that too. There's like different potential and possibility for whether you're a father or a mother, and different dynamics in the way you relate to the world and your children and each other, depending on if you're a father and a mother. And that's it's an interesting journey that everyone has kind of uniquely on their own, but because we can we're all kind of one consciousness together, we can learn generationally from each other. And even now with the internet across continents, across the whole planet, it's a really beautiful way to claim your intention and your purpose in this journey.
Yeah, Mother Teresa says, if you want to heal the world, go home and love your family. And it's very interesting the way, and I think any couple can relate, the way you sort of fill out each other's maybe low points and help each other in those ways, and like support each other, and then when you're down, the other one will jump in and do the same for you. And you just kind of end up being almost like one organism, and as a family, I think we all are one organism, as part of the Gaian collective, consciousness and biology, completely interconnected and intertwined. And so that practice of serving other beings, and my experience with permaculture and stuff is, a man, it's, a way to nurture and create life, in a way that you don't get to, not being able to birth children and all that kind of thing. It's the original root word of husband is, your capacity is in husbandry, whether you were tending land or tending animals, you had that ability to nurture life, and that's the true source of abundance, and our well-being is nature itself, our nature, and the biological diversity that is like our extended family, so taking family as like a microcosm that we can expand, then to our communities and to the biology of the whole earth and the whole universe, um,
And there's been a big call for all of us to return back to that, hasn't there? Do you feel it and sense it too in New Mexico and southern states?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like we have no choice really, and because it's in my mind, it's not even being called back. It's this forward motion call, that life is moving perpetually in this forward motion. We can never avoid that trajectory. And if we are to continue in a way that is healing and whole for all of us, then yeah, we see it all around us. We see that people are, I think, coming to realize that if they can have some sort of connection with nature, that's going to be ultimately the most healing space, because we all feel that in us, that all our problems really stem from that disconnection with the natural world and the natural ways of life.
And that's why we chose this lifestyle and livelihood, was we feel like this is the place where we can create the most effect with, the least effort, as well as being called inwardly, to have that more complete connection with nature. And it's been amazing. It's been like so fulfilling and so fun. And, to essentially, um, I really think your higher self is actually your inner child.
Mhm.
And, to just run around barefoot on the earth and, climb trees and forage for plants in the forest, and, learn about their magic and medicine, and, help people tap into it. We've had a couple classes where people just like break down crying, because they're just like so happy to be in that sense of reconnection that is like our birthright as human beings. And we've been missing out on a lot of the juicy connection there is with, the totality of life here. And so it's, but it is this thing, like Hannah said, I really agree with, and I, think her point is good, of like, it's not going back, it's going forward. And we have to integrate in these times where we are to where we want to be. And really, if we can couple, ecological health, human needs, and economic abundance, that's the way we're going to really be able to synergize and move forward collectively to heal the planet. And we have all the tools available to us through the design principles of permaculture to, like we can grow 8 acres worth of food on 1 acre, or they're doing these massive projects in like Africa and India and China that are like hundreds or thousands of square miles that are being rehabilitated into massive foodscapes and are uplifting areas out of economic, poverty and health crisis, so that's how I see it to be the total linchpin to, there's no reason why anyone should be hungry. It's just a matter of our design. We could have our cities be designed to be, you know, uh, integrated with food forests and parking lots and, and parks and, have apiaries on rooftops and living walls and, micro remediation of non-point source pollutants right at the point of source there in the city, and create sustainable food systems where, people, we already, pay county workers and what have you to like keep grass and, ornamental trees and what have you. There could be a whole system economic driver of biomass for biofuels and, food systems that locally distribute, and beauty and free food for all. you know um, our limitations, as we got into a little bit at the beginning of the discussion, are just the ones that we create for ourselves, and we can use our magic power of imagination to create whatever we want in this realm. And so we've created ourselves into a space now based kind of on um, other people's, we'll say, intentions and endeavors that have sort of formed and shaped the collective systems and school and what have you, so that we've developed patterns that are not healthful to ourselves or the earth, and neither physically or mentally or spiritually. And so it's just this reckoning point, this time where, the earth can only take so much of our abuse, and we can only take so much of our own self-abuse, that we perpetrate upon the earth. And, so, it's just like anyone who's been in a really bad place in their life, where you just hit a rock bottom place where you can't go down any further. You must go up. And I think that's kind of, the pendulum has swung so far to one side that now it's inevitable that it must swing in an equal, way to the other side.
I
Yeah.
love that you guys are exploring what you call living freely too, because to me, free doesn't mean without money, that it doesn't cost anything as far as our financial structures are set up right now. Free means more something like unobstructed, like unobstructed thought flow, so that we can use our creative imagination to create our realities, and unobstructed physical, mental, spiritual flow. That's when we're in a state of freedom, when we're not like clinging in attachment to one thing or another, held down by our certain, they're not even like your basic needs, but what turns into an unhealthy state, like attachments and addictions and so on. So that freedom that we can have to be able, that happens naturally and in the natural flow of things. I think the way the cosmos is designed, the way the earth lives and breathes through us and with us, and it's just, that to me is freedom,
Yeah,
whether or not money is involved.
it's an inner state, yeah. But to be independent, and we are addicted to our current system and the patterns, all the negative, traumatic patterns and food systems, and
I think it's just from being misinformed, and people like yourselves are and us, we're on a mission to reform those structures that we've laid down for ourselves in our society, and reform our thoughts so that we can live in right relationship and live freely.
And it's like, I totally, I mean, you said so many things there, but even the idea of misinformed is like, I definitely think we've been misinformed. And the other part of that is what you were getting, and I'll tie a couple things in here, but when we've been disconnected from nature itself, I feel like it's really easy to then be misinformed and to accept things that are not really truthful, that are maybe false, or not designed to be in the highest good for ourselves. I feel like we're disconnected from, when we're more connected into nature itself. I feel like just that process, like when you were talking about the people that you would have over and all of a sudden it's like they break down and cry, like because there's something they're connecting to that's real and meaningful to them that they've
Yeah.
kind of been disconnected from, but it's never really gone, but they've just been disconnected from it. So I feel like when we are disconnected from that, it's easy to be led astray. It's easy to see the world in a perspective that maybe is not so wonderful for self, others, and the world itself. It's like because we're disconnected from what's truly real. And so I know in our experience, the more I find that we spend time in nature and make whatever adjustments we can to just try to be able to and be a part of it more and really appreciate the sacredness in it. Like when
And
that
put your bare feet onto the earth, literally.
yeah,
Yeah, there's
like
magic
there's a
there.
process that happens because then it's not so much of even trying to figure out what needs to be done. It's almost like you organically just know. You see the world differently. So when you're doing that and you're out there in nature, the thoughts that you were talking about, you know like there's ample food, you can grow it all over the place, but it's like those thoughts I don't think even come into being until people start to connect more into that landscape. And when you start to do that, those thoughts just pop in. It's like, well, why wouldn't we do that? You could totally do this. Like all of a sudden you see the world through new eyes with new possibilities, and then you start to want to put that into practice.
Well, our conditioning has been what? Like phrases like dog eat dog. It's a hard world out there.
Competition versus collaboration.
But then when you literally get out there in nature, it's like the plum tree is so abundant and so generous, and it keeps giving. It gives so much fruit that you actually can't help but start to share some with your neighbors all around you. So
Mhm.
the nature of nature is generous, is abundant, is
And is freely giving.
freely giving. Yeah.
Totally.
Unobstructed.
Yeah, nature is a vitality machine and an abundance machine. Every cell in creation is seeking vitality and like exuberance, and that is also our birthright. We just listened to a really great podcast with Zach Bush. I don't know if you're familiar with Zach Bush, but he was, just going into, this whole idea of like um, integrating our inner masculine and feminine, such to the point, and this actually goes into the esoteric science too, of like, the channels of the Ida and the Pingala and the natural flow of your cerebral spinal fluid, especially if you meditate and, have temperate practices and things, that we could create a bliss consciousness inside our body that is ongoing, because of this exuberance of life and the consortium of trillions of cells in our bodies all, seeking that, and so, it also ties into this conversation with, nature and our connection with nature, because our, our bodies are made of mostly microorganisms that aren't us. And we're actually a consortium of life that's held together by a thought, and light. And so that's the same thing that's going on the exterior of us. In the soil, there's all the microorganisms that enable the health, the digestion of for the plants, to be able to also coalesce as a consortium and radiate light. And so I think we're moving into this place. People are starting to understand more, the laws that govern the universe, that everything is mind, and that we affect at the quantum level with our mind. And so I think that's going to be the new horizon. And as part of this conversation, there's this reconnecting with nature, but also that being your own nature, your own body and emotions through, things like meditation and, that inner work where you go inside and you, connect with yourself and you start to get your, in your life. It has to be beyond just on the cushion, but getting your life to sing, so that you're like singing this vibration of like love and gratitude, with everything you do all the time. And I've gotten to experience a bit of that. I feel very lucky and grateful, that to be able to thread together. It was one of my goals of, your 9 to 5 to your 5 to 9, because there was always like this demarcation and separation, and wanting to integrate my dream body and my light body, my waking body, as well as, all of my, content, thoughts and feelings, and my contentions, the things I, saw that like human beings aren't bad for the world, but our way is bad for the world. And so how do we change it? And to make every bit of all my activity all day to be in connection with nature, healing myself or healing nature itself, has just been so like amazingly powerful. And just, and just to feel like a kid playing in the garden, as a 47-year-old, you know, I've had my challenges, definitely, as we all do, but to be able to go back to that inspiration as a touchstone, to get through the hard times.
And like you said, Taya, just being barefoot on the ground, the magic in that. If that's like a place that makes it easy for people to start, like if you can just put your feet, you don't even have to walk, just put your feet barefoot on the ground for 15 minutes a day. That'll change your life. And, being able to, even if your eyes are closed, let the sunlight shine in to your eyes first thing in the morning or at sunset. Or drinking fresh spring water or the cleanest water you can possibly find. Even if you just have filtered water at home, you can put it out in the sunlight, and that changes the water structure. And then
drop a crystal in it, or
yeah, so that's what the breath work, the breathing, the being out in the wind, and just the breathing of the relationship we have with the trees, for instance. They need the carbon dioxide that we exhale to live, and we need the oxygen that they exhale to live. So having those simple things in your life, they can just be life-changing. If we can possibly integrate those into our lives, even if you live in where there's a food desert, and you stand on the corner and you just look up at the sky, even if the clouds are just made out of smog, at least you have a vision of the sky, or maybe the quote unquote weeds, we call them, the plants that we don't want growing out of the sidewalk. It might be some kind of nutritious food. And just to connect with that and see the ladybug crawling on it, or, something special like that.
That brings up a couple of really good points that I want to jump on the back of, if you don't mind. And that's, the reason why we call our school the Zia Elemental School of Permaculture and Herbalism is because part of our practice of healing for ourselves and for land is this interaction with the 4 elements of earth, wind, fire, and water. So every day, you can just connect with the earth, go ground or touch the earth,
or eat healthy food. That's the earth element as well.
Yeah, eat healthy food, culture foods, work with, probiotics and all these things to nurture the earth element in you, and then similarly with water, get the best water you can, try to structure the water, put loving intention into the water, or take a shower and just feel. That's one of the few times when we ground, because that's often where, since the water is running through the ground and then through the shower and hits us on our head, that's why we get those great shower thoughts, as you're basically grounding through your crown. So and we'll do that when we go, by a river. We'll go and put our head in the river and just kind of wash our crown, wash the thoughts, sort of clean, and then the whole thing of with the wind, like breath work or exercise, get your lungs pumping, the whole thing with breatharianism, like is a key part of that is having really good breath, and concentration on your breath, because it's gets down to a state of awareness where you're really just trying to keep more of an equilibrium so you don't burn out your energies, and so you're actually cultivating energy, so anyway,
lastly, the fire.
And then the fire. There's getting out in the sun. That's the best way to get vitamin D, is to have it on your skin, the way infrared light heals, you know, the way it stimulates the rods and cones in your eyes to release, you know, stress chemicals, to stimulate the pineal gland and decalcify it. You know, and just your interaction with light and energy in general, and even actual fire, you know, sitting by the fire and red light is much better for you. We all know by now, you know, the benefits of enjoying red light in the evening rather than all the blue light, you know, to keep your circadian rhythms all, you know, in flow.
And stargazing too. I mean,
Yeah,
the light from the stars and the moon. Yeah.
yeah, I'm usually in the sun,
Yeah.
and she's the moon.
Oh, there you go. That probably makes sense.
Early morning out there,
Yeah.
like, yay, sun. And at night, she's like, come, you're the moon. Oh, what? Yeah.
You know, we had a conversation in part of this series. It might have even been our first one with Dr. Joseph Lieberman, who's one of the premier light workers, as far as really researching into light and the different bandwidths of light, and working with eyesight, but it goes so far beyond. But he was talking about that too, just the importance of actually exposing yourself to the different colors, the natural color spectrums that change from early morning as we move along to the evening. And you'll see that, you know, the sunrise has very different color tones than the sunset. And as we kind of go through that and we get that full color spectrum, that also is tying us into that natural circadian rhythm. That's a great practice for getting back into alignment with how nature cycles. And, you know, most of the time that's not what happens. You know, in the evening, where are most people focused? They're usually looking on their tablet or their phone, and they're getting bombarded by a lot of blue lights rather than the tones that they actually should be receiving at that point in time that are natural just from looking outside.
So this is even getting into some of the ways in which we haven't lived freely. Exactly that, in that, you know, so many of us having chosen or moved into the 9 to 5 jobs have been indoors in cubicles all day, and, you know, under fluorescent lights, and or driving home and exposed to so much LED lights. Like, I just find it even really challenging driving at night now, because it's, you know, especially if it's raining and the LED lights of our car and the other car in front of us are just flashing into, you know, our eyes. It's really disturbing to the nervous system. But yeah, so even choosing differently, choosing to take off your sunglasses and allowing the eyes to be exposed to sunlight, and allowing your skin to be kissed by the sun. I mean, these are just such blessings that we get to expose ourselves to.
And they're so funny because so many of those things are things that we've been, you know, kind of taught
to fear
in so many ways. I mean, the sun's such a big one. Like, people are terrified of the sun. You know, like before they go out, they're slapping sunscreen on and
spraying
and I'll often explain to people, I'm like, you know, you don't want to be sunburning all the time. That's not healthy for your body, but sun exposure is incredibly beneficial for the body. I mean, so many things. And, you know, my background, I'm more Norwegian background, so my skin tends to be a little more sensitive to the sun. But what I've found is that by just allowing myself to naturally have exposure to it, and starting maybe earlier and later times, and building up a tolerance, it's like, I find now my skin just really enjoys the sun, you know, and if I start to get too far, then I know to kind of cover things up, and be smart about it. But it's like we can all build this resilience, and I feel like it's a part of having this symbiotic relationship with these elements.
That's been a big driver for me in a sort of path of passion, and in just the realm of sort of biohacking, but more epigenetics, that we can just, you know, through exposure to the evolutionary factors of nature, we can express more and more of our genome, just slowly, gently, by building, you know. And so that's also how I've worked with the breatharian path, you know, and it stems from the thoughts around Chinese traditional medicine of like the gentle healing is always the strongest. You know, we always in our culture are looking for the like really strong, big, you know, healing, but it's the gentle healing. It takes more time, and you have to be more patient, but it will root in and be more healing at that sort of vibrational, energetic level than anything you do. And I think that's going to be the future of medicine and our understanding going forward, is more of this level of energy and vibration and thought. But there is, what you mentioned also reminds me of our interaction with foraging and wild plants, because we're taught so much to avoid as kids, like, don't eat those berries, like don't stick that in your mouth. And they find actually that children do better in survival situations because they will, do that kind of thing. And the vast majority of things that are out there are food or medicine. There's very few things that are poison, but and even those can be used as medicine at the right dosage, for the right symptoms. But, it's that thing of, just knowing your plants. And that's another really great, in terms of the discussion of how to reconnect with nature. Go, start learning plants. I bet everybody out there knows dandelion already. Start working with dandelion, bring it into your life, throw it in your salad, dig up a root and make some dandelion coffee, or, read about it, and learn about it that way. And that's another way to kind of develop, this connection and knowledge with nature.
It's taking part in the microbiome of nature too. And you mentioned sunburn. So one of my natural doctors, she was a homeopath and practiced Heilkunst therapy, as well as many other forms of natural medicine. But she mentioned that if you sunburn, that's likely because, like most of us, we have an imbalance in our microbiome. And that's because we're not participating with the microbiome of the natural world. And so even if you're just out there, digging up a dandelion root, or, putting your bare hands in the earth while you're gardening or planting something, or your bare feet, because you have that energetic exchange with the microbiome and the electricity of the earth when you're barefoot.
Yeah, your body actually, the microbiome of the soil will seep through your skin if you have your hands or your feet in the soil and on the soil.
And if we can balance our microbiome, then we won't sunburn. We'll be, in right relationship with the sun, and we're not going out for a long period of time at the middle of the day, like you said.
And there's herbs you can use. There's things like creosote, or just like you were saying, just going in, slowly but surely. But, it's interesting, the whole thing with the microbiome too, because we think we're very interesting and complex, and yet our genome only has about 20,000 genes. And some of these, fungi, virus, bacteria,
even flies, fruit flies.
Well, not fruit flies are about where we're at, yeah. But these microorganisms will have as many as trillions of permutations of genetic diversity. So I think of them almost like the midichlorians in Star Wars, that give the Jedis their power. That's what's in the soil, and that's what's in us. And they're almost like, they display problem-solving skills and, all manner of things. And this one soil biologist refers to them as like the Einsteins of the soil, and so we're infusing ourselves with that. Every time you're interacting with these elements of earth, wind, fire, water, those evolutionary pressures are evolving you and helping you become more.
So what does that translate as? What does that translate as when we're creating that connection, and when we're having right relations with those things that you just described? Is that then creating greater resilience within us to be able to navigate our life, getting sick much less often? Would that be the translation?
Yeah. So interacting with the actual ecology, but also, doing fermentation, this whole lifestyle that we've been living promotes health on all levels, and so we grow cabbage, and then you have too much cabbage, like you said, when tree blooms and fruits, there's like you got more than you need. So we make krauts and we make, kimchi and stuff and store that away, and she'll eat the kraut and I'll drink the juice. And we both get, these rich indigenous microorganisms that are from our area that will help inform us to, how to be more indigenous to this place, and to be more evolved and adaptive to where we're from,
You mentioned a really important part there. You said around from our area. This is the other thing I think with microbiome that's really important when we start to think of it this way is it's why it's also really important to try to eat as local as possible, because your microbiome is very much connected to the microbiome of the earth around you. And so whether you're gardening and you're getting your hands in it, or you're eating at local food markets or something along those lines, but the closer you are to, it's just like if you're having honey that is very close to where you are, even like as closer to you as possible, you're going to get more benefits from that honey than from honey that's, shipped from another country, for example, or something, because it's likely more tied to you and to inform you based on where you actually are.
It's the vibration of the bees, even if you have a local hive and the vibration that they are experiencing is different than, another locality.
Well, they've done all these interesting studies, and what you said about the honey is true. Like that's a good allergy remedy because you're getting the
Exactly.
pollen from everything that that's around you. But there's this whole there's been some really interesting studies they've done around growers, and growers have all these various esoteric practices, and one of the things is just to hold seeds in your mouth as you're planting them.
Yeah.
Uh, and this kind of connects your genes with the genes of the seeds. And they find, particularly farmers who do this, but even farmers who don't, the things that they grow, they will even uptake the like proper nutrients that person is lacking. There's this total connection between what you need and what you grow. And so we have farmers that are growing most of our food for us collectively. It used to be after the, victory gardens after World War II, 60% of Americans, I think, grew their food. And now less than 1% grows the food,
Wow.
And so we could all be growing in our backyards or on our terraces or whatever, a small amount of food and sharing it with neighbors and create, community resilience, local in-season, fresh, more nutritious food, beauty, that sovereignty and this interaction that we get to have. That's why we love this lifestyle too, is everything we do all day, we're connecting with the elements of earth, wind, fire, and water. And they just, helping us feel happy and healthy and, and that sense of freedom, I really love that you guys value that, because as a Buddhist, the Buddhists value freedom more than peace, even, that it's more important to be free as the beings that we are, as beings of light.
It's sort of a predecessor for peace.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting, because we're seeing that play out right now very vividly, aren't we? In that, are you really yearning more for peace, or are you really desiring freedom, which sometimes and oftentimes it's not peaceful. It requires actually the opposite of
Well, or
that.
it
It's a bit of an
requires,
upheaval.
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing right at the moment, because I feel like sometimes in the quest for really living freely, and I mean, this could be taken on many different perspectives, but the process to arrive at true freedom is not necessarily a smooth
Walk in the park.
walk in the park. I mean, often you've got to go through, I mean, even like dark nights of the soul, I mean, within yourself, even if we talk about, freedom from the, rantings of the finite mind, or from
Our own
or from
thoughts.
all of the different pieces. It's like, that's not an easy process to go through. And sometimes I think people want peace to actually avoid the fears that naturally come up to eventually allow us to arrive at a place of true freedom.
This is kind of then, going
Good.
into positivity, that and that what that has become. And I feel like that's just a yearning for peace, but really you're trying not to
You're trying to
go into,
avoid the
you're trying
discomfort.
Push
to, you're
away.
trying to avoid the discomfort. Yeah, push it all away, and not go
Mhm.
through the excavation of what's really lying within.
Yeah, I think that's going to be more and more the case, that just we're all going to be. I love this. I think it's a Rumi quote. And it's like, you'll keep being broken until you're broken open, you
Yeah.
know. And I think that we're collectively going through that we've done so much suppressing of our true feelings, whatever they are, in that way, that you just described, in ways that we try to like use something that is, there's a truth to it. There's a truism there, but we're using it with the wrong motivation. So we're not going to get the benefit because, from the Buddhist perspective, the things that cause us pain are this, clinging on to stuff we love and that pushing away of the stuff we don't. And really to transmute it, you need to be with it, to be free from, the inner things that plague us. That's primarily what, bothers humanity. And it goes into, all sorts of self-directed thought forms and programs that have been inculcated into us, that we have to like go through and kind of. I think of our inner world very much like a garden. That sometimes you got to go in with like a bulldozer and rip a bunch of stuff out and just like, kind of get back down to basics, and then start fresh. And it's like a traumatic process, and to be in that place of openness with your darkness and to share it, and then be seen in it, because we're so avoidant of, ever being seen as having any, frailty or any, anything but, being completely put together all the time, which is just, of course, bullcrap, you know.
You know, when you were talking about almost that pleasure pain relationship that Buddhism speaks about, where we're trying to, hold on to what keeps us pleasure and push away whatever might cause pain. Isn't nature like the best teacher to help us like let go of a lot of those things? It's like, I look at the trees and it's like, get the cycles that naturally move through. And it's like, you could get addicted to any one of them, whether you're waiting for the fruit to arrive and you can't wait for that, but then the fruit eventually dies and it falls off and it moves on. And then you go through winter and it's like, there's nothing there. It's like, it's a natural process. It's like, there's times of like great abundance and there's times of not. And it
Beauty.
ebbs and it flows and it's different and there's no attachment to any of it. It's just a natural sort of cycle that keeps moving around.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's the wholeness. I appreciate somebody, I think it was Seven Bomar. He mentioned how the word peace, it kind of has that connotation of being a piece of the whole. And so if we're only, paying attention to one part of the whole, then we're not really whole, right? So if we can allow that integration and respect both parts and acknowledge both parts and, soften the dichotomy that we currently live in, realize that it's not just about black and white, it's the yin yang, I believe, is like such a beautiful symbol for the wholeness and how everything contains the other, so to speak, within it. So it's
Jesse,
yeah, to
Jesse, you
integrate
were,
that.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, that was all, just to integrate that the wholeness into our perspective on life.
Yeah, that should be part of our goals. That feeling of wholeness. That's holy, to be holy.
You were
So
speaking earlier of the microcosm and how it's seen within the macrocosm as well, and vice versa. And when you were talking about nature earlier and what's around us, it made me think of, even when we gave, when I was nursing my children and one of them would be coming down with something, they would be extra snotty and they wouldn't be able to breathe while they were suckling, I would notice that my milk would change. And then that's what got me looking at, well, why does the color of the milk change? And how is it that depending on where the baby is, that my body actually alters itself to produce a different type of milk? And then I realized, oh my goodness, the body is truly magical. Like it actually alters what the baby needs based on the baby's saliva that is communicating with my body. And so my body is actually producing exactly that which is going to help and assist the baby in healing. And nature is definitely like that too. Like
That's
our
Mother Earth.
Mother Earth
Right.
is that, in that, there will be plants not accidentally growing all around us that, was helpful to my father who had leukemia, or my mother who has heart issues, and the poppies I'm specifically speaking of.
Well, it was funny. My mother-in-law, she would have a lot of like sleep troubles and some anxiousness and different things along those lines. And all of a sudden, it's like California poppies were flowing up everywhere around where we were. So
Love it.
I was like,
So
well, all right,
beautiful
like
and stunning.
it's not no surprise. So we dug them up and cleaned them up and made some tinctures from them and started incorporating some of that with her. And it's a piece of the overall puzzle to help, it's the wisdom from that's going to come in. And then I think it helps with those sensations and those symptoms, but it also, sometimes I feel like it then allows people to even open up a door to explore the other pieces that might be there as to why there's more sleeplessness or anxiousness, and the mental emotional sphere of it as well.
Yeah, it's like an empowerment in self-care. It's like the gateway drug almost. Like
And Taya, I love that you brought up the reflection of motherhood and our bodies as being that reflection of the earth and what the earth provides for us. Because I feel like that's another thing in that separation from nature and the natural world. We've come to have this, I would even go so far as to say, this deep disrespect for the divine feminine.
Mhm.
And so mothers are devalued to such a degree that it's causing such horrendous, disempowerment in the world.
And if you think about it, that's really like attacking the root of our community. That the women and the mothers, that's how we all come into this world. And our connection, our most intimate connection, and what sustains us from the earth itself. And the Mother Earth. And even just being able to be present in this realm, she's got to be here. And learning to drink, wild water and trust. We've had people out there and they're like, we can really drink this, and,
It's not make us sick.
and they do. And it's like life-changing. It's like having never had water before,
Yeah. We've done some big conversations on water and the difference between dead and live water and the structuring process and all the different things that go along with that. And when we came out here to Vancouver Island, one of the things that we found too is we actually were looking for these clean underground mountain spring water that we could go and fill our jugs up. And it became a bit of a pilgrimage. We'd get the kids and we'd go drive out, and then we'd go hiking up for 20 minutes or so to get to the
And we take crystals to
gift to the.
Oh, you guys are.
We did the
You guys
same
are
thing.
family.
And it's cute because our little girls just on their own
beautiful.
would start to create little altars, and
Yeah.
they would start to collect pretty leaves and rocks and little offerings to the spring, to the mountain where we would go and collect the
Or
water.
even to the elementals that they can see or picture around there. It's really beautiful. And it just adds, like, it's like the whole experience. You sit there and you just fill up your jug and you down it, and it's like it's not even water. It's like if people have not had that type of water, or even sometimes I think you can create some really magical structured water with some of these people that are very much tied to bringing nature's principles into a way that people can access it. But it's like it's a different substance. It literally is. It's like when you look at some of the research on the fourth phase of water and what you're drinking, it is a different substance than the dead water that you get out of your taps. And when you have it, you're also like, you're informed differently, and
you're like
and you
wanting
crave
to
it.
drink more of it. It's like, oh, like there's something so satisfying and nourishing that you just like want to drink it all up. And this is coming from somebody who was like a camel. Like I just I barely drank for years, and like Jason would be so startled because I would never have to go pee, and he's like, why don't you drink more water? And I'm like, I just don't want to. Like, and it was because the water that was there it wasn't
Body's wisdom.
nourishing.
Yeah.
Your body's wisdom. And then when he found real water, it was like, yes, give me that. And
Yeah,
I think we're actually in an epidemic of dehydration because
we totally are.
most people are drinking that chlorinated, fluoridated, recycled, pee poo water. And, it has that energy imprint on it, and the whole thing of the structuring and information, whole density of water. And like you were saying, the fourth phase of water, that's a key part of this other thing that I'm exploring with breatharianism, because developing that exclusion zone water, that liquid crystal jelly, there's a positive charge on one side and a negative charge on the other side. So this whole thing of moving into breatharianism and living on light, is not like you just stop eating. You have to develop other forms of chi. You have to like refine your chi and your breath, and there's fasting and juicing and diet. That's only one of the disciplines of the many disciplines that you use collectively to achieve this Taoist bigu state, or state where you need no food, you don't get sick, life extension, all those kinds of things. So
Yeah. We often talk about, like, I find like in health, there's so much talk around the next major supplement and the next this and the next that. And those things can have their place. I mean, I understand that part of it, but I still feel on so many levels, if people really were integrating these really fundamentals that are very much tied to nature, you really start to drink really clean, structured, live water. Get yourself out in sunlight and take it in through your skin, through your eyes, like be immersed in it.
Walk on the earth.
Walk on the earth, get that grounding effect. Eat clean foods that don't have glyphosate and are genetically modified. Like really, if you can incorporate those things, I honestly feel like you're going to find, and then learn how to breathe, like actually stop breathing from all up here, learn how to actually breathe and use that as a way of actually fueling yourself. Because all of these elements that you're taking in, this is information. It's not just the water as water. It's like when you're talking about the structuring process that happens, that's information. And what they're even finding is that is even playing a role in how our proteins modify and change, and how that informs our DNA. It's like that water and that light energy. I mean, it goes well beyond what we think it does. And this is where I think we're moving into as well in the future of medicine, is going to incorporate all of these things in a much, much bigger way.
Can we talk a little bit more about that? Because I know that on the days that I'm feeling sick, or for the past 2 years specifically, I get these really intense headaches. And I've recognized a correlation between when there's been a lot of spraying taking place in the skies and then the headaches kicking in. And it's debilitating to the point that it knocks me out, and I can't function for a few days and nights consecutively. But I know that my body just actually does not want food during that period. And I naturally go into this fasting state for a few days. And I feel that actually helps me to rebound much faster than if I were to consume anything at all. How has that experience been for you? How did you come across deciding that you were going to go without food? Because you're just drinking liquids now. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been a long process. Part of it was just my initial dive into real self-care for the first time in my life.
When we started with raw food.
I started working with raw foods, and at the same time, I was just coming across this information about sun gazing and grounding. And, this was like, 14 years ago. So this was really like kind of out there at the time.
And we've had an extremely different journey along the way too, which we feel blessed to be able to share this like completely different way in which we've taken this journey side by side.
Mm-hmm. yeah, and support of each other, not like in the feelings of like, division. Those were there and we had to work with that, but it gave us an opportunity, to grow and learn and be more expansive as beings. But yeah, so I had heard about Breatharianism and it just really thrilled me. And I was like, it, I think that's kind of when I decided it wasn't something that I had made a conscious decision about. It was more like the thrill in my soul that, what you guys are expressing here about freedom. That was the sort of connective thought, was like, man, you could do anything. You go anywhere. You wouldn't have to worry about financing your dinner even, like you just travel, just be. And I thought, wow, that'd be amazing. But I didn't really uh, consider that I might actually be able to do it. I just was thrilled with the path of the practices of, it was what I needed on a physical and mental and spiritual level to heal through that time. Because I had been a young father, I'd done like most people had done, abused their bodies and their minds in college with, drinking and overstudy and overstress and, lack of sleep. And then moved into starting my own family and starting up my own business and kind of pushing out too much with my young life energies and not honoring my body enough, addiction to porn and all the things that young men go through, that I had to like resolve in myself. And so this path was just me just getting right with my own self. And so I moved to raw foods, and over time, I'm barefoot gardening every day and in the forest. And so I'm gathering up electrons all of the while I'm sun gazing, I'm in the sun, I'm moving, pardon me. And so eventually breakfast just leaves. I'm just not hungry at breakfast anymore. And then after a while, the same thing happens for lunch. And then I started to become more and more, the thing about breatharianism started coming again for me, and just inspiration, watching Ray Mayor and Ellie Tom Elamine and some of these folks. And I got an invitation from Ray to go to one of his courses and that I could pay later, but I just couldn't afford to break away as a family man. And we make a pretty, humble income, so I couldn't rationalize that to myself. And so following Ellie Tom, he was kind of breatharian for the common man, so to speak. And he just initiated it himself. And that's essentially what I did, where I started just working epigenetically with fasting. So I just, fast regularly. And then that moved into dry fasting and doing like at first a 24-hour dry fast, and then 36, and then 48, and just slowly like pushing it out more and more. And then after doing a 4-day dry fast, I just made a commitment to live on liquids. And anything you can do for 30 to 90 days, you can do, and do easily, you can make a habit, you know. So I was able to do that, and over time, I was then doing intermittent fasting with that, and juicing for like maybe 6 or 8 hours a day. And I just started to shrink that window. So now I have 1 hour a day in which I consume liquids. I've actually got it here for my breakfast for later. I got some pineapple coconut juice and some superfood juices and kombucha and stuff. And then I'm now once again working epigenetically with doing like a 48-hour dry fast every week. So this has taken 10, 14 years to move into this, and it's mostly been about the consistency of these health practices that I just needed anyways. And I think this is actually where we're all moving to, that we're actually all breatharians. And what you explain and experience, the way I understand it, from the perspective of like, Hilton Hotima and breatharianism, and also sort of what I understand about health, is we accumulate in our bodies. If you've been eating food and breathing toxic air and chemtrails and everything for 40 years, without giving your body a break, all this is just accumulating. more and more in your liver, in your blood, in your lymphatic system, and never having a chance to clean it out. So when you do liquid dieting, when you do fasting, and you get that autophagy, and you get, after 48 hours, your body starts to make stem cells. So like you can like rebuild organs, ostensibly we could live, biblical ages if we can actually hack this thing, really read the instructions and understand this piece of technology, that this is like the highest piece of technology in the universe, you know, that we could, do much more than just not eat, that we could maybe transcend dimensions, move into rainbow light body, forms, like there really is no limitation. But and it's mostly this understanding that starts to come in, that we are light, that light is it's all of creation is just an energy exchange of light, just going back and forth, you know. So our electromagnetic fields, are on this non-visible wavelength, but our fields right now are having a conversation, as well as us with the plants around us and the animals, because it extends far beyond your body. So I think if we move, so that's been the other thing, is moving into the heart, and like it's this whole thing of this consciousness of freedom, whereby you're just really moving into your heart self, your pith, innermost self, and practicing, balance to your best of your ability in relationships, in your work, and all these things. And so that your energy isn't just being blown out, because that's what we do culturally, is like you stress and you go and try to, grab onto these things that we want, that are supposed to give us happiness and freedom, like money and houses, but really, if you don't have that sense inside of you, then it's just a facade, so I'm long-winded.
Jesse, what is dry fasting for the audience that is not familiar?
That's no food or water. Yeah. So
What I love about what you just communicated is that it's almost as if your personal instructions kind of led you to create the pattern and a particular relationship with food and liquids excuse me, as you needed them. And then your journey, Johanna, is a little different, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So I was always very intrigued by nutrition, and I feel like I grew up with somewhat in that like state of poverty consciousness and poor nutrition, and that led me to really hunger and thirst for more, for something that would be more in alignment with my my source energy flowing through me. And I really I was excited to hear information on vegetarianism and raw food and so on, and I just wanted to find some kind of healthy pathway. And I felt like I really hooked on to that, and I had this sort of behavior of trying to find information externally. And so when I came upon this, I thought, well, I'm going to try this, and I saw how he was having trouble with food allergies, and I told him, why don't we just try eating raw food? So we did, and within a week, he was just in this like bliss state every time he ate, and I was sitting there feeling more and more depleted and thinking, what is going on? This is supposed to be the healthiest, way to eat for anybody. And so I eventually figured out that it was like, number one, I was already depleted from breastfeeding nonstop for 6 years and having 4 pregnancies in a row, and not having replenished myself already at that point, because I just didn't have access financially to a lot of the things that I wish that I had, and just the stress of that lifestyle, living from that mentality of there not being enough. I was experiencing that reflected in my body and becoming more deficient. And the human body is, all of us are so unique, and the way we function is so different from a lot of other creatures on the earth, and at the same time it's very similar to a lot of creatures on the earth. So it's I just had to sort of come upon that journey myself, where I was thinking, externally, if somebody says something's good, this person has a lot of experience with it, it's going to be great, I should try it too. And I would commit to it, but it just wasn't working. So eventually I just had to dawn upon the idea that maybe I have an inner voice inside of me saying, this is what you need to do, and listen to it. Because when you don't, guess what? You get a migraine for maybe 3-4 days, like you were saying. Or, you'll be depressed, your cycle will be completely out of whack, and all these things that it contributes to that, causes long-term problems when you're not listening to yourself and interacting with nature in a harmonious way as well. I think that if you do that, that helps you to listen to yourself. So that's just been my journey, is that, I've found, like with fasting, for instance, it was almost like everything he tried, it was wonderful for him and really not okay for me. And so we had to sort of learn to live with that dynamic of just accepting the fact that we have completely different needs. And so when I tried fasting, I just further knocked myself off balance. And I did it in such a way that I didn't notice for several years later. And now I'm sort of trying to get myself back into balance. And I realize now that, a lot of research shows, which again, that's turning it externally, but a lot of research shows that women in particular should never fast every day, especially if you haven't gotten yourself to this point where, you're later in life, your cycle has changed and your needs change. And so that's when it's going to be more safe to fast more aggressively, so to speak. But there are ways that we can fast as women to benefit our health, and we just can't do it the way men do. So I think it's a huge medicine. And for me personally, if I'm stressed out, if I'm sad, if I'm angry, if I have a headache, if I'm out of balance in any way, I definitely tend to feel like food, putting something in my body, food, whatever, is not going to be beneficial for me. So sometimes I do that to my detriment, though, where if I'm stressed out, I'll forget to feed myself and nourish myself in ways that I need on any particular day. So it's just really a journey. Balance is not something that you arrive at. It's something that you are constantly, back and forth, the pendulum, riding the wave, whatever, however you want to equate it. It's a journey. It's not a destination. So that's my journey for the time being.
I really love that you mentioned that, Johanna. I think that's actually one of the most important points right now collectively, that is something we all need to embody, because we've gotten so used to having an outside authority sort of inform us. And like we talked about earlier, when you talked about women, it's like when you look at how childbirth has been so medicalized, and what many women intuitively know it's then discredited, and then they actually start to question their own mother's instincts, right? And fathers too, we can do that too, but it's like there's something very precious, I think, particularly with the maternal instinct, because of that direct bond. And there's many times I've talked to women after that, they knew certain things, but then they were told by a expert in a certain position of authority that wasn't the case, and then they kind of let it go, and then it actually turned out to not be all that great sometimes in certain situations. But what you're basically alluding to, or what you're speaking about, is that we need to come back home to ourselves. And even if we have, I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at outside sources, but run them through your own personal instructions. Don't take anything for absolute fact until you run it through yourself. I find, like, if I get really excited about something, my natural instinct is to look around. Like, I want to explore things. I like to read about things. I want to learn about it. But ultimately, I want to run it through my body and see what my experience is like with it. And with foods and diets, I mean, I've tried so many different ones over the years just because I've been curious and want to know. And I will find,
And you get a lot of questions from clients too. It's like, what's the best diet?
well, it is funny because a lot of times I go, well, what's your body telling you?
Exactly.
It's like, try things out. And the whole thing is, it's like, because we're so used to wanting expert advice, we sort of don't allow ourselves to have our own experience with it and value it. And so I love this part of it, because to me, this being, living more freely and tying in with what we've talked about with creating new earth, it's about each individual showing up with their own personal instructions and bringing that into the world unapologetically and uncensored. And how do we actually start to do more of that in this way of really honoring what we're being told, through ourselves, and then exploring it and not feeling bad about it. It's like, I find like this in the health industry and with diets, it's like, oh, well, if I can do that, then, and maybe you're just not ready for it. Maybe you're kind of, a little bit less or something like that. And at a certain point, in spirituality has been turned into this in so many ways. It's been hijacked in a lot of ways of it's become like, spiritual superiority, and we just get caught in the same cycles. But I find with foods, for me, I grew up having tons of food allergies, and I actually could not have any raw foods. I would have extreme reactions to raw foods. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started to be able to work with a lot of the underlying stuff and heal things and be able to incorporate some of that stuff. But I know, like, when Tay and I look at what do I have that really feels good in my body, and what does Taya have that really feels good in her body, they can be very different, but we can
Yeah.
both arrive at almost a similar place of how it feels, but from very different angles on it.
Yeah, and I really love you guys having shared your experience, because, I mean, for a breatharian, you don't require any food. So we experienced that for a short period while we were in Mexico and were exposed to a lot of sun, where I was, without food we fasted basically because we felt like we
7 to 9
wanted to.
days,
7 to 9 days.
just water.
And I feel like I could have kept on going. And, even though every day we have to go and feed our little children, you're surrounded by this beautiful, colorful foods, and the smell is wonderful. But to not go with food, like, you have so much time. There's ample time, and there's finances that you're
On.
saving, and it's such a different experience than, typically it's through, 3 times a day. And let's put that to rest. I don't even know if anybody needs to eat 3 times a day. Like,
Maybe when you're young, maybe when you're like
Yeah.
a teenager.
Depends on
Right.
your life circumstances.
Yeah.
And again, it's about listening to yourself. And it's frustrating how much time and energy most humans will spend toward getting some kind of food in their body. And at the same time, like, I really appreciate that Ellie Tom talks about how he says something like, eat your way to breatharianism.
Mhm. The whole idea should be
It's not
you're-
about not food. he
You're
said.
trying to get to the highest state of health and well-being possible.
And also
So
Ray
to
Mayor.
change our goals from, that, there can be the byproduct of things like breatharianism, life extension, all those things. And those are fine to kind of make as your goals, but I like, like Wayne Dyer talks about how he loves playing tennis. And he had no aspirations of being a great tennis player, but he just loved it so much. He played it enough that he became a pretty good tennis player, and, to fall in, we're so culturally in love with the product, but disconnected from the product process. And we rush through the process, and it's almost like rushing towards our death, because everything has to be just like this endpoint, and, but the process, that's like the fun part. That's like, when you read the book and you get to the end, you're kind of like, oh, now it's over, right? You got to put it down. The fun part is the pages between. So, and falling in love with the journey of just self-care and loving yourself and loving nature and being in connection with all that and growing, you'll know it when it's easy for you to fast, or you'll know it when it's easy for you to be in a relationship and things just flow smoothly, simply, there's little markers that we can like take a look at within ourselves, where the sort of proof is in the pudding, you know, and not really be hung up on. I totally agree with your point about like spiritual materialism and sort of the way in which all these things like diet, nutrition, herbalism, spirituality, these are like our cornerstones, of our foundation that keep us happy and healthy, but they've been sort of co-opted and objectified,
And people like
marketed.
to have instructions that go along with them, as if, that can be imparted to somebody else on a grand scale, like a sort of blanket statement that this is good for everyone kind of thing.
Our main message we hope to share through our school and teaching about herbalism, nutrition, or breatharianism, or any of it, is, to trust your own guides. Like, how many times in your life have you said, I should have listened to myself, and your higher self is just as smart as mine, and we're all equal in spiritually, biologically, in every way, and it's just, what effects you want to have in your life and what your goals are, and what you said about, our gifts too. We like this idea of the gift economy, and that, your gifts aren't what make you special. It's what you're meant to give. It's what you love and you want to see more of in the world. And so you just do it. If you love music and you want to create music, like, you should do that. If you're, love gardens, make garden. If you like podcasting, don't die with the music inside you. Just do what it is in whatever shape, form you can. And,
Whatever gets you in that interaction of prana, like, some people like to use the word breatharian, and some people use the term pranic living. And I feel like I resonate with that personally a little more for my perspective, just because I feel like prana comes from everything. And of course, the breath is the primary form of that. But it can come from the light, from the food, from the water, from music, from exercise, so many things.
Conversation, like,
And even just that, that in a meditative lifestyle, being aware of that interaction with the energies in the world.
Jesse, you just talked about recently the process being really important, not just this destination that we're so oftentimes addicted to and fixating on. Johanna, when you were talking about even going through the process of fasting, and then you recognize this pattern that you've had from like not feeling nurtured from before. I mean, these are some deep knowings that arise when we're really present for the process, because then you showed up for yourself in the way that you needed to, and you started to nurture yourself in the way that your body required it, which is very different from intellectually getting fixated on this ideal, perhaps, of a goal of wanting to fast or become a breatharian, which I feel like our culture does get tied into really easily, feeling like something is superior and something is less than. So we want to strive for that thing that is better.
Something outside of yourself.
Right. So then really being showing up for this moment from moment to moment, and really becoming more curious about the process, and honest and raw and curious with a sense of wonder and openness, this is where the healing truly occurs, not these isms that we get fixated on and strive for, but it's really, really being present for what's showing up for us in the now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I personally feel like I can't call myself an ist or subscribe to any ism.
She just got hooked onto a guy who explores with some of that stuff.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, we all have our own, source point of energy that we are emanating into this world. And at the same time, that can't really be boxed into something. And, as humans in our society, we like to put labels on things. That's how we use our language, and to sort of differentiate one thing from another. And we also use it to group things together and, say, you're one of us or you're not one of us. And so it's really about fitting into your own self rather than fitting into what other people are trying to encourage you to fit into so that they can feel good about themselves, I suppose. I don't know.
Well,
It's an
it's really
interesting
neat
psychological
because
journey.
it feels like, I mean, even if there was a place for some of that at a certain point in time, it just feels like the times themselves are transitioning. And
Mhm.
and this is where I think people are going through some struggles with it too, is because
Mhm.
we've known things a certain way, and we're still
Mhm.
trying to figure out, like, where does it fit within what I knew? And I think the reality is we're creating something new that maybe hasn't, we can look at some of the past stuff and see what parts of it resonate and what fits, but it's different. And I don't think anything we've currently done is fitting completely into these old patterns and these old ways of doing things. And so we're really trying to um, cultivate something new. And this is why, if we are connecting into our own personal instructions, then we're going to really start to bring that up. And it's going to be different for me or for Taya or for Jesse or for Johanna or for you guys listening. It's whatever part of you is coming up that you want to bring into the world. But that's what's exciting. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I get really excited about the thoughts of what it could look like.
We have a loved one who was a butcher for a long time growing up, and or what he did as a career, and he loved drinking, and now he's reached a point in his life where his body actually doesn't desire meat at all and can't drink at all, and he's just like a little bewildered because he's like, he thinks something is wrong. He's like, I don't know
Growing
what's
out of the
going
box.
on. Yeah, exactly. He's like, I just want to drink juice, and I just want to have, sweet stuff and maybe an ice cream, but I don't want to eat meat. Like, I can't drink. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And
This is actually really endearing.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's incredible. I mean, that's the thing of it, is like, we can take a poison up to a point, and then it will force us in the other direction. Our bodies or our spirits will course correct for us.
And even if it's not a
We just
poison,
honor and trust, the process.
yeah.
Trust, our guides, our inner guidance, and it's going to take you where you need. Because we also, I really believe, we kind of make soul contracts before we are born. That I want to go through this and that, because I need this learning and that, and so should never be fault finding of one another, and really just be more supportive in that, as we're all creating a new world. We're creating a new earth. Like, even now, that everything that we've known before, as you said, is fallen away. And so, it's really a juicy potential. There's so much, so much fun we could get into. I think of, just
Yeah.
the creating a heaven realm on earth, you know, uh, and it's going to take a lot of work, but I don't think any of us also showed up here like not wanting some challenge. I think our souls, being infinite and wise, like we we want, to test our mettle and see what we can do,
Mhm.
and these times are very trying and very testing, but it is this changing, over a new page, and it's scary, but it can also be, as my friend Devon, he's another breatharian, says, uh, fear is just excitement without the breath, you know.
What was funny, and I thought of this the other day. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of Cryon, Lee Carroll
Yeah.
channels Cryon, and he had said in all of his teachings for the past few decades that, he has this intense love for humanity, and I never totally understood that. Are you guys okay?
Yeah, we're okay. Well, our computer's about to run out of batteries, so she ran to get
Okay, the
the
cord.
cord.
We're
Yeah.
very familiar with that.
We can wait for a second, come back to that one when
No,
she
that's
arrives.
okay. I was just going to mention this. It's okay if she misses this one, but
Yeah.
Cryon had mentioned his love for humanity almost in every talk with the past few decades. And And I said to Jason, I didn't quite understand what he meant or why there was so much lovingness for humanity. just considering all the things that we've caused havoc and shit for so long. But I'm starting to realize it now, and exactly what you're alluding to, in that there's so many challenges that we're surrounded by and that we're all navigating through, and that there's almost this sort of initiation, it feels like, that we're all moving through at this time, and likely signed up for. We share that view as well. And it's when you kind of, when I personally connect with that, I just have this immense love and appreciation for humanity as well. And this is, including my ex and my neighbor who I might be having difficulties with, but whoever it might be, I have this great love and appreciation for all of us who have stepped in at this time, during these very challenging, oftentimes challenging circumstances, because it takes a different, I feel like it takes a different level of courage, yeah, to just be here.
Well, and on some level, I feel like kind of like selflessly actually chose to come here and go through all of this. And
Yes.
you connect to that, it's hard to not get kind of teary about it when you think about the things that everybody kind of transitions and we we explore while we're here.
And we bring out in each other,
Yeah. To work with
Yeah,
each other.
different
We're medicine.
lifetimes within this life, even.
So one of the things that, this whole thing with the elements of earth, wind, fire, and water, we see that also, with dosha type and, how they present themselves in the body. And also your medical astrology, because you're going to have a predominance of, the different elements based on your medical astrology. And what we find is that we're medicine for each other, that we're all angels because we all have our astrological angles. And if you're in alignment with your angles and you're doing what gives you love and you're doing your purpose and your gift, then you're bringing your angelic gifts, to humanity. And there's this place of connection, this understanding that can happen by looking at our uniqueness, our unique astrologies, our unique genetic histories, our unique propensities of earth, wind, fire, and water, and it happens with us in the forest too. We'll be taking people on a foraging or a wildcrafting walk, and they'll be telling us about their conditions, and we'll stop and we'll look down, and the plants that they wanted are right there, and it's just, and that's happening all day, every day. The people that you're running into are your reflections of yourself that are trying to show you some medicine, try to bring up, and those hard situations, they're bringing out hard things in us that we need to work with. That it's just a reflection of ourselves, and it's also a good reminder that everyone is suffering, and that love can stem from that place too, of like, no one wants to suffer. Everyone wants to have, comfort and peace and health, and, but that's not the reality. There's a lot of suffering, and to be empathetic genuinely to suffering, can be part of this breaking open of the heart to become our whole true selves. So
I really appreciate Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements, and just looking at the world in that way, where you don't take things personally, because that
everyone's doing their best.
Everyone's doing their best, and everyone is actually a part of you as well, and a reflection. We're reflecting to each other, the different things that are going on in our lives and the different ways in which we are all trying to grow through things together.
And I think those moments of deeply knowing that comes a lot easier when you have less stuff on your to-do list, where you're just less busy, you're less caught up in the intellectual and trying to rationalize things and understand things on purely the logical, rational way. But it's a heart activation that is almost needed for those deep knowings to occur, that empathy to kick in. And I think if we can all just kind of reevaluate how we spend our time, what we do in our day to day, and see where we can, what's truly important to hold on to, and where we can start to maybe set things aside that are not really essential. Because within that time and space that we create, there's a lot of there's a lot more space then to have that have those deep inner movements start to occur, where these deep inner knowings start to unravel.
Well, and it's real. It's like when you allow that space to happen and you feel it, you can't help but then have your perspective and your viewpoint change. So sometimes we're wanting to make changes and we're trying to figure out how to change something, but we haven't actually connected to what it really feels like. And when that happens, all of a sudden you genuinely see the world through different eyes, and then you're going to actually interact with the world in a different way. And that's when I think we really make these different leaps and jumps, and our lives start to really transition in a much larger way without us trying to do it so much, as opposed to you embody that and you feel it and you can't help but then see things. It's like forgiveness is like that. You can try a lifetime to try and forgive something, but if you actually embody that state and it hits you, you can't help but have forgiveness for certain things, because it's almost like it's just a part of
There's a
that
deeper
whole field.
understanding. There's a deeper understanding.
And
even.
it's just you just feel it, like either you feel it or you don't feel it, and that's ultimately what drives people's behaviors.
It's almost like a reaction. I think of it as the transmutation, you know.
Yeah.
We want to transmute pain, we have to be in pain and be okay with it, you know. So it's like the whole Buddhist adage, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. You know, you practice it daily, you choose it, you know, and then sometimes you fall off, sometimes you mess up, but then you choose to do it again, you know, and you just keep coming, and eventually we have these mind transformations. I think, you know, you mentioned a leap, and I think, you know, leaps can be kind of hard for people. People want leaps, they want big change right away. But my experience is actually a slow, gradual change is a little easier on the system, on the mind-body system.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how frustrating it can be, with how
It
long
can
it takes.
be totally unnerving.
We
Because
wouldn't want it any other way.
We want it, and we want it now, you know, and we want to have the control of it, that outcome. But, you know, trusting the process, that keeps coming up for us. It's just trust.
Yeah, that we're always exactly where we need to be when we need to be there, and we always have exactly what we need when we need it. Just that innate, I guess, that's just the way nature works, really.
Well, the Buddhists would say that's what happens with our mind, is we make these discriminations of good and bad, you know, whether it's like good diet, you know, and I think this is where the superiority complex stems from too. Is this good, that bad, you know? And even if it's just like subtly, like, oh, this is just a little bit better, eventually it gets this proportion that is completely out of, you know, scale, where the things that we have deemed, you know, good and bad start to dominate our mind and cause us pain, you know? And instead of just accepting things as they are, whatever it is, you know, because you can't change it, you know, no matter how hard you think at it. You know, it's still going to be what it is. So to come into that loving acceptance, try and just practice loving acceptance of your life, you know, experiences as you go through them at all times, knowing that they're like in Buddhist Dharma, they say if something terrible is happening in your life, you can think of it as a good thing, because it's some past negative karma that has come to fruition and is now being kind of expunged from your life, you know. So we can embrace, you know, even having that kind of psychology helps us embrace these struggles with a different kind of mind frame. It's, you know, going to lead to more success and just an easier time, you know. And that's what we want ultimately, is to just create greater ease for all beings, you know. So
I also find like we often will read the kids Buddhist stories to our kids. There's a lot of really beautiful ones from there. And there's
We
definitely
tried the Christian book one time, and it's like, oh gosh, this is not a good one. We would like have to censor ourselves on every other sentence.
Different ways
not
of-
that Christianity doesn't have some beauty in it around certain things,
Yeah.
but sometimes the
Yeah.
kid stories were a little bit hard to try to then explain. The Buddhist ones were really easy and gentle,
Really
and
beautiful.
usually involve animals and different things too. But just that concept around, it's like the idea of like good or bad. I don't know. That farmer that, you know, the their horse runs off, and then everybody's like, oh, that's bad luck, and he's like, well, good luck, bad luck, who knows? And the next comes back with two horses, and it carries on this sort of idea that you never really know. But I think when you can hold that space of trust and faith, and like you're saying, like a certain psychology around it, you're not digging a hole of creating more unnecessary suffering. It's like that second arrow that we keep shooting ourselves with. If we can avoid that one, we can manage the initial sort of pain that happens with just being a part of life when things happen, but not add and add and add to it, which I think makes it really hard to deal with all of that
What
stuff.
would your grandma say? She was really beautiful, and
Yeah,
she
she
had a
was
hard
such
life.
she had a lot of struggles, but she would just be like, well, you do the best you can with what the good Lord gives you. And it
There's
was
so
really, and she meant it. She wasn't just saying it's like, as she, had been paralyzed on part of her from post polio and had lost three partners, throughout her life. Like, I mean, it was just a lot of things, but it was like she genuinely embodied that. And you could see even like how she'd treat her leg that didn't work anymore. But she'd tap it on the leg and be like, come on, good old leg, as she's gardening and picking her leg up and moving it around. She still had a love for that. There wasn't like an anger at it. It was such a beautiful way of interacting with herself and in the world. I so appreciated having that role model to light that part of me up, I think, somewhere.
That's another big piece. I mean, in my mind, is like honoring our elders again. They're really the treasures of our community. They've more life experience, and they get kind of tucked away. But in the past, they were like they were the wisdom holders. They were the wise ones, and so that Hannah and I both had good interactions with our grandparents, and being able to have that sort of influence in our life as well, and to have that reconnecting between the generations, I think is another key piece. But you guys are lovely, and I hate to say it, but I'm gonna have to get going because I have to get some garden stuff done this afternoon.
we
I love
we
it.
we are finished. Yeah, I know I think this went on for a long time. We get opportunities sometimes. We've got our kids have a wilderness instructor here right now, taking them out doing stuff. So
Oh,
we have a window for a bit. So I think we've
They're
just
out in
been
the
thoroughly
forest and
enjoying our
foraging too right
conversation.
now.
So yeah, they're
wow,
out
that's so
picking stuff
cool.
for herbal teas and stuff right now. So
Well, thank you so much. If we're ever in the New Mexico area, we will be sure to look you up. But in that, where can people find some of the work that you're doing and the offerings that you are putting out into the world?
where's the
We
best
have
place for our viewers to check things out?
You can check out our website, which is just ziapermaculture.com. That's probably the easiest way. You can sign up for our newsletters or get in touch with us via email. We have our herbal products there and our superfoods. Or if you want to connect and have a consultation, you can reach us there. And then we're also on Facebook.
And Jesse puts out a lot of YouTube videos too, and we're both on Instagram. He's Light Energy Alchemy, and I'm Johanna Feliz. So,
Okay.
Wonderful.
yeah.
light_energy_alchemy.
If I can get you guys to send me all those specific links, we'll have that made available under the show notes as well as on our website as well.
Yeah. So whether you see it on YouTube or you watch it on the podcast platforms or through UK Health Radio, we'll have those links down there too. Guys, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for what a great conversation.
Thank you, and we look forward to meeting you in person. If you can reach out if you come to New Mexico.
Yeah, it's so
And
nice to meet you.
anyone listening to, we would love to interact with you as well. So blessings to